It's early in the morning. It's 9:30. Early
Okay.
for a weekend for sure.
Yes, for sure. Thanks a lot for waking up early for us on the weekend. And this is and anyone who is joining in from YouTube or from on Zoom. Uh, there is this is a session that is happening in the evening because Gaurav is joining us uh, with us from New York, and it's early in the morning for him. Usually, we do our sessions at around 11 in the morning India time on Saturdays, but this one is a significant exception because we are trying to do it for the first time at 7 in the evening. It's 7:03. I'll start with the introduction of all the sessions, and then slowly Gaurav will start with his presentation. So I am Souvik. I run Miraj, which is a strategic web design and development a web design and development studio in New Delhi. Content Web is a series that we have started since May. Uh, it's a series of freewheeling chats for people who create or maintain their own content-based websites. And by when I say content-based websites, I mean they are typically publishing-heavy, CMS-driven sites. It could be a marketing site, could be a media site, could be an e-commerce site, etc. In this series, we want to cover topics that span across the three important practices that go on to build websites of this nature, which can be in the field of content, which can be content strategists, copywriters, and all. Could be a designer, graphic designer, art director, etc. Or even developers, which can be front end and back end. And obviously, there's also the fourth factor, which is the website owners, the businesses, or the people who are serving all the business functions like strategy, marketing, etc. So want to involve them also in our conversation. So today we have Gaurav from Srijan. Gaurav, would you like to introduce yourself for us?
Absolutely. Thanks for that context, Souvik. Uh, so hey everyone, I'm Gaurav. I've been into this industry for almost over a decade, about 13 years now, and into multiple different roles. I ran a couple of companies in my earlier life, which seems like a lifetime. Right, sold one of them, and then essentially been working with Srijan for the last good 7 years, building businesses for them in different markets. Right, so right now I essentially take care of the North America market for Srijan, and it's based out of New York.
All right. Thanks. What would you be speaking about today, Gaurav?
So this has been an area which has been of interest of mine and kind of now became a revenue generation line for us for some time now, which is voice first. I kind of got into this for almost like 3.5 years back, just out of the interest piece. And what I think the fundamental thing that we have to realize, right, is that we are at a place where now we are reinventing the internet, right? So the way that internet was, or the way that internet we knew internet at one point of time, is essentially now being reinvented in a way via voice first,
All
right?
right.
Obviously, everybody don't agree with that, but it's definitely a good piece to discuss about.
Absolutely. I think we want to discuss pieces like this, which not many people will agree with, because that's what would widen our own conversations. And in today's talk, Gaurav, who would you say is likely to benefit most from the talk that you're going to give today, or the topic that you're touching
Anybody
upon?
who owns portals or websites or
Okay.
build websites, right? Or both of them, right? Obviously, when you're building a site for your client, you want to make sure that you can maximize the ROI, right? And if you own a portal, or if you own a website, if you own a business, online business, any kind of online business, right, should worry about voice first,
All right.
especially content.
All right. Okay. So Gaurav will be starting his presentation in just a bit. But before he does that, here are the basic instructions for everyone who is joining in from YouTube or Zoom. There will be about 20-25 minutes of initial presentation by Gaurav, and we are We'll try to not interrupt Gaurav at that point of time, let him complete the presentation at the end. And during the presentation, if you have any questions, if you're on Zoom, you can use the Q&A feature or the chat feature to put in your question. If you're on YouTube, you can put a question in on YouTube as well, and someone from GasGeek is going to forward that question over to me so that I can take up that question after Gaurav's presentation happens. Once after about 25 minutes or so, once Gaurav's presentation completes, when we open for the Q&A, at that point of time, you can also raise your hand or put in a question, another question in Q&A. And if you're on Zoom, I can also patch you in so that you can ask your question directly and have a quick chat with Gaurav as well on this. So with that instruction set, Gaurav, let's start with your presentation and let's see what voice search is all about.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks everybody for joining the call, joining the talk today, right? Whatever platform you are. Couple of things, right? Before we start, here's my handles. If you want to contact me after the talk, right? If you, there's a Twitter handle, G Mishra, LinkedIn, gmishra.com, right? It redirects you to my LinkedIn profile, and you can you can find the slides at bit.ly/gmishra, right? Feel free to reach out to me and if you want to talk anything about voice first and what we are doing in the industry, right? And before I start, right, usually start with some context and why I was first, but right now we'll jump into directly into some success stories, right? So why you should even waste 20 minutes or next 30 minutes talking to me or listening to me, right? So let's hear about some of the success stories, right? So this is L'Oreal, right? There's a video right there. You can, I will not play the video right now. Once you look at the slides, you can essentially play the video and hear about. So the gentleman here essentially, owns the web, or the organic traffic acquisition for L'Oreal, right? And he's talking about how they have been investing into voice and how voice has helped them big time, from a voice search queries point of view, and how they have benefited, right? And being early, what helps is if companies like L'Oreal and and when they jump into something very early, right, with their money that they can invest, right, they can really benefit, right? Another piece is Erica, a banker. You have a bunch of them in India as well, but this is Bank of America, and they've been using a big they're really well known right now from an assistant point of view. It has 6 million users, and it's now very well accepted. Slowly now globally as well, but at least in America, where if you call up particular call center number, you're gonna talk to a particular virtual assistant, right, which is gonna ask some basic question and do a self-service, right? And you can find tons of examples in India as well, right? This one is one of my favorites, right? So and you'll say that why this is not voice, right? But this is very much to do with voice. This is NYT, New York Times, and there is a New York Times section called New York Times Cooking, right? New York Times, what they did is that not many, but few years back, New York Times decided that they will go back and change their content management system in a way that it is creating the recipes in a more structured format, right? What does it mean is that they had like literally 50 fields, right? In which you had to fill all the 50 fields for the recipes to get created, right? Today they literally own that segment, and it's a vertical search engine, right? If anybody wants to find a recipe, New York Times cooking segment is literally a vertical search engine, right? Now that's a huge segment where businesses can invest in or should invest in, right? And I'll talk about why I think about that in the later slides. But I think while I'm talking about success stories, right, and this is a slide which came in after I did this talk like a couple of times, few times, right? And this definitely always used to came in questions, right? Um, what's so frustrating if you have used, Alexa, if you used Google Home, um, in you said, it doesn't work, man. Apart from basic stuff, it just doesn't work. And then there are other concerns, right? So the government is tapping into your, what you are saying. There is NSA. There is, all kind of recordings happening, right? There are bots that can take jobs from humans, right? So that's not good for the humanity and things like that. So there are a lot of worries for sure, but we'll not talk about it today. Yes, so yes, there are a lot of worries. Yes, there are a lot of concerns, but we will not talk about that. We will figure out that if the voice, right, becomes a big place, right, which it's very clear now that it will, right. But even if you are, you know not very confident that this is a place that, because it's frustrating, that there's a lot of privacy issues, but if it will become, what we should do today, what we can do, some small things today to ensure that we are prepared for the future, right, is something that we're going to talk about, right. So why voice content strategy is important, right? Why, right? So as I said earlier, right, so even if you think that it's not something that will become big today, right, or in the future, right, why you think, why it's important, right? See, building a content is very expensive, right? And it takes years to essentially build content. NYT cooking, it took them 4 5 years with a very massive team, right, to essentially build that entire content database of recipes, right? Imagine if they have to do that tomorrow again, right? The kind of expensive cost it would be for them, right? And the way that we've been handling voice is that, okay, voice is another channel, another platform, and my web is a different platform, and I'll create a different content stream for that, which how people started looking into it, and it's just not feasible. You can't create two different content streams for two different mediums, right? It's just very impractical, right? A lot of people that do say that, unfortunately, when I'm working with organizations, they realize you can't do it. It's very impractical, right? And and the main piece is that we have to understand is that conversational legibility of the content, right? And we'll come to that later on, what that means, right? So on a high level, what it means is that when you read a content, you can very quickly understand the context of that content by just skimming through that content, right? You'll read a line at the top, and then you'll just leave a couple of paragraphs, and then you'll go down, but you still get the context of the content, right? What does mean, and what you'll find what you wanted, right? And you'll get that information. On the other hand, when we are talking about voice, a conversational legibility is very important, right? That means that, can a person who is consuming that information via voice understand the whole context of that content, right? Which we don't really think about when we build content management system. um, as I said, very high verbosity when you are using, when you are reading web-based content, right? It's very visual, screen-based, and what we don't realize that the hyperlinks, right, which is the core strength of the web-based world, maintains relationship between different content, right? So you get essentially context from content. Google core algorithm is around hyperlinks, right, between each other, and right, and you have a very complex information architecture to find different context for on different content. You have nothing like that on voice, right? You have no hyperlinks, you don't have complex information architecture, and it's a zero user interface, right? Either verbal or oral, right? And that means it's a very low verbosity tolerance. That means that when you're building a content for voice, you have to ensure that the context precedes the content, right? So you can write a 5,000 word article, right? And in that 5,000 word article, you might just want to highlight like three core different points. You can still write a 5,000 word article for three different core points, right? But when you are building a content for voice, right? It's very important to say that what these three core points are, and say it in a minimum word possible, right? Because you are on a verbal and oral mode, right? Somebody's hearing you rather than reading you. So, lot on the stake. Let's take some example from the real life world, right? So, this is a page that we took, that one of my friends, Preston, worked for Georgia government, the Atlanta government here in US. And they essentially build a Alexa skill where people, especially old age folks, or marginalized folks, can know about the benefits that the Georgia government is providing, right? And they translated the FAQ over, which is kind of the gold mine if you're looking at the voice, into an Alexa skill. And so one of the benefits on the page of employment benefits page, FAQs on the employment benefits page said, how long can I receive benefits, right? Now, if you are serving the same content over, if you're using the content on website, which they did initially, and they realized that it's not working because of few problems, right? And that's where the conversational legibility come in, because when the person is reading this, how long can I receive benefits, on the web page, right? He says, okay, yeah, I am on the page which is conversational, which is on the employment benefits, and it's saying employment benefits. But when he's hearing, he doesn't know that he's on page, the content is coming from the employment benefits page, right? And that's why he doesn't understand what that means. So that you have to make sure that the entire context is in the content. That means, how long can I receive employment benefits? So these are some small things that you have to ensure when you're building content, that the entire context is in that content, right? Similarly, is some things like that. Learn more about payments. Right? When you're hearing this, learn more about payments in Alexa, you don't know what that means, right? Because you can't click somewhere. And that's why when you're creating hyperlinks, make hyperlinks inside the content, so that if you are reading the same content on the web, you can click and go through and do something. And if you hear that same content over Alexa, right, you're still fine with it, right? Cool. So I think it kind of set the context down, or the stage, right? So in the voice, the 7 seconds is what all we have. Make sure what you want to tell the people, you can communicate that in the first 7 seconds. Okay, is should be the goal, from a content strategy point of view, right? Now let's talk about some practical things that you can do. Okay, if you're building voice, or if you're building for Google, right, you will all know, or if you care about SEO in the first place, right, you would all know the featured snippets, right? And what I tell my clients, my listener, everybody today, is that don't do anything out of the box, but just build your content to ensure that it can't come on the featured snippet, right? And if you do that, you should be good, right? A couple of things that why what that means, and where the featured snippet and that position 0 is coming in, which we call on the SEO, Google about position 0, if you want to know more about that. But if you look at a normal keyword search, right, which is so I've just done a screenshot, search YouTube SEO, it gives you a typical search result page with some videos, links, blah blah blah, right? But if you do the same search in a NLP way, right, which is the way that we talk, which is the way that we consume information on voice, right? How do I rank my YouTube videos? Look at what Google did. Google pulled out a video. This suggested a clip of 83 seconds, right? Because he knows that you can't really consume a content which is a lot of content, a big content, a 5-minute video, a 10-minute video on voice. They suggested an 82 seconds content and said that in this video, this 82 seconds is what is relevant for you, right? This is what Google is doing today, right? And and you should worry if Google is doing it. That means that the brand words, or the words that is important for your business, how are you ranking on the natural language search for that keywords? If you should worry about today, right? So how do you get on the featured snippet or position 0, right? Optimize for long weight tail keywords, 3 to 5 more keywords, right? optimize content for whom, how, why, right, where, and these things keyword. And use schemas, right? You remember, right, NYT cooking that I talked earlier? Schemas are the holy grail, which are, now become very, very important. I mean, as the webmaster, the SEO experts have been talking about this for many, many years. But today, if you're not having schemas very, very tightly integrated with your content, you are doomed. Right? So ensure that you have schemas very tightly, integrated with your content, right? And the one important piece is that ensure that what are the so in a in a non-voice world, there are a lot of CTS forms, buying buttons, payments, blah blah blah, right? Different call to actions. But in the web, in the voice world, the only CTA right now is the contact information, the phone number. So ensure that you have if you have local listings, which is kind of the where voice search is essentially seeing a lot of traction. You have a working phone number working there, right, in your listings, in your content, right? Because that's what Google picks up in a lot of cases. If you remember the famous video that Google showed where they call a barber, right? Um, Again, quickly, very similarities between feature snippets and voice search optimization, right? Create a content, that answers a specific question, write a topic specific page, right? Look for questions, right? Look, see that can you answer a one question in that particular content, right? One particular theme in that particular content, right? And go for long word keywords. So if you just build your content for featured snippets, right? And I'll not go deep into all this thing because we have limited time, right? But just worry about how would you manage your content, or optimize your content for featured snippets, and you should be good from a voice search optimization point of view for now, right? Another important thing, and why featured snippets, why schemas, are more important, and why I was emphasizing on NYT cooking earlier, is Google really recently announced that you don't require, unlike Alexa, where you have to submit a skill, build a skill, and maintain that skill. Google is not going to ask that. If you have a schema on your website and it's well defined, with all the content, it will pick up and build an action automatically out of it. Okay, that means that if your competition is having a good implemented schema, there is a good chance that Google will pick it up, build an action out of it, and it will serve it to the people who are asking questions around that particular question, right? Some of them which are very well, which Google picked up, in the initial pilot, or if you will, right, where they are turning that into schema are news, recipes, podcast, FAQs, and how to's, right? These are the 5 ones which Google has picked up. So, and while news and recipe and podcast is not something that is relevant to every business, how to is relevant to every business, right? The whole idea of having a website is that you to tell the visitor that what your business does, right? How to do something with your business, how to essentially buy from your business in the first place, right? So if you don't have a how to schema implemented, you're missing something, right? So go back, at least implement how to schema, if nothing else. If you don't want to do anything else, do at least how to schema, okay? And make sure that it is implemented there. FAQ schema, how to schema, these are some very basic things that should be there. And just I mean, I've worked with enterprises globally, with some very, very large Fortune 500. You'll be shocked that how less people think about schemas, right? How it's an afterthought. Don't make it an afterthought. It's not going to help you, right? Again, another example of schemas. It's an FAQ schema, which I was talking about. I'll quickly talk about speakable schema. That's something that Google launched recently. And Google said, yes, there is a lot of schemas out there, right? But yes, we are asking everybody to build the content in a featured from a structured format. But the reality is, most of the web well is not there, right? They have not implemented schema in a good way, and it's very unstructured content all over the place. So they said if there is a particular piece, a particular content that you want to serve on the voice, just implement speakable schema, right? And with a title and a description. Title is essentially the keywords around which you want to, optimize your content for in the voice, and the description and the content is the kind content that you want to serve as an output, in the voice. So they're trying to make everybody's life easier, right? And this is right now they have limited because it's a beta stage, and it's only limited to the media organizations, right? So breaking news and things like that. But there is no reason that why it will not open up, or why Google would not quick silently, right, roll it out for every other business out there as well. Yeah, so it's just saying that okay, we understand that every content is not structured, so how can we give you a quick way out? Great. And now we're just towards the end of the presentation. I want to quickly, right? So I I was doing this talk in DrupalCon earlier, right? And people are skeptical, right? That why it doesn't work. Just try different things, right? I said one is DrupalCon. It gave me a featured snippet said May 18 to 23, right? I was doing this in Florida DrupalCon and camp as well. When is Florida Drupal camp? February 21st. I was, when is Drupal 7 end of the life? Right? It'll give you that date, November 2021, right? So you don't realize it, but for everything, Google is actually building a featured snippet or a position 0, if you will. The question is, are you going to come as a business in that featured snippet or not? Right? If you're not, see earlier, you had like, if you were in the top 10, you were fine, right? You were still getting a lot of traffic and business. But in the voice world, if you're not at the position 0, you're screwed, okay? Because that's the only answer that Google is going to give, right, on the voice word. So make sure that you invest in it, right? Another important thing, right? So my friend said, I was walking with him, and he said, it doesn't work, right? As skeptical like many people, and I said, okay, give me a question that you would think, so we were sitting at the Florida Technical College, and he said, okay, what is average tuition fees, right? And he knew that because he was from Florida Technical College. And I asked that question immediately to Google Assistant, and it gave me 29,838 USD. It was right there, right? It was 29,700 something what he was paying, and it was right, in accurate, right? So imagine, right? We think that okay, we don't get answers, but if the more we start using it, that more we would realize that it is very, very accurate in a lot of sense, right? Cool. Few things. If you use href and SEMrush and other tools like this, I pulled this up from href. One quick thing would be just go in and look at questions which are more NLP centric, the keyword search that are coming on your website, which are more voice centric, more NLP centric, and you'll realize that there is a lot of visits happening, right? So this is one of my clients. I picked it up, and you will see that 300 searches, 350 searches, 250 searches, right? And these are happening, right? People are doing NLP centric searches, right? Even if you don't realize it, even if you're not optimizing content, the searches are happening out there, right? And some very complex search. What is an advantage to alternative energy technology? What is the advantage of solar energy, right? You would not even think that NLP search people are doing, right? What is that advantage of using the pyramid of energy? So people are doing NLP centric search because that's how people talk, right? That is how naturally they talk, right? And more Gen Z, more as they will come in, then that's what they expect, right, Google to do, right? So optimize your search for natural language searches, right? That's one of the end, and I'll not go into Kane, but I probably can quickly talk about it. But so one of the things that I talk about, you started talking about recently, is that what I'm realizing that when we start building this context, and it is the bedrock of a personalization as well, right? If you want to give a personalized journey or a good personalization experience, context in the content extremely becomes important, right? Taxonomies, it starts from taxonomies, but it goes up to a very, very deep level, right? By defining a good field structure. And that's where I'm realizing that it's a good time to invest in a customer data platforms, right? Because at one point when you realize that you've invested so much into context and content, and if you don't have a customer view and a 360-degree view of a customer and saying that what that customer is doing onto multiple platforms at multiple channels, right? You're going to lose a lot of historical data. So if you have not invested in a customer data platform, and if you're not asked your customer to, or you ask your client to invest in a customer data platform, do that today. It's a very important piece. And lastly, this is something that we have been building actually internally at Srijan. We are building a voice-first learning management system on Drupal. All right, because the modern learner is very distracted, right? Gen Z, and I did the demo last time, and and all this thing. But and I'll not go into this. But we are building a voice-first learning management system, and we're going to open source it soon, right? So that other people can use it as well. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Savik, for any questions we might have.
Right. Thanks a lot, Gaurav. We would love to know about Kane voice first LMS as well, but maybe subsequently we can have another call with you about discussing about those.
Sure.
But first, this talk was very informative. But I fear that a lot of people are just going to get stumped by the word schema.
Sure.
So for the convenience and understanding of the larger audience out there who don't speak the same technical language like both of us do, can you explain schema in very simple words for us?
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me take explain that by a small example, right? We all know events, right? We all know events. Now, this event, for example, right? This event, when this talk got scheduled, there are different content properties in that talk. There is a time that it starts. There is a start time. There is an end time. There is a speaker, which is me right now. Name, right? There is an organization name. There is a link, right? Now these are all different content. Now there are two ways of inputting that content into a content management system, right? Either you can club and all that, in one text field and input that all that content into a one text field, or there is another way where you say start date, start time, end date, end time, right? Speaker name, Zoom link, right? Topic, right? And have all these as a different fields. Now, the two. So from a front end point of view, both are displaying the same content. Right? There is no difference from a front end point of view in the same content, right? It's still showing, the both of the content are showing the topic and the name and the speaker name and start time and time. But on the back end, the where you have defined different fields, what it is doing is it's a very structured content. That means the computer, the system understand that what that content means. But if you put that all in the text field, the system doesn't understand what that means. That means the Google doesn't understand what that means unless and until it does a lot of effort to essentially from an NLP point of view to find meaning out of that content, right? And that is the difference between a structured and an unstructured content. And schemas are essentially predefined structures to the structured content. So for everything, properties, real estate, bookings, products, every damn thing, cars, loans, everything out there, you have a schema, right? I mean, somebody actually claimed, I asked this question to one of very senior person in this industry from an SEO point of view, and he said, if there is 97% of the use cases out there, there is a schema out there. There is a structured format, right, which is already out there. So what you have to do when we say implement schema, that means make sure that when you're defining content types or the fields in your content, right, you adhere to that structured format of schema in that in that your content types. I hope I made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to continue on this, but before that, if anyone of you in the audience have any questions, please post them on YouTube or on Zoom, and I'll be taking them. So continuing on this bit itself. So one of the things that I would add to the schema is that if anyone has not come across schemas, just go to schema.org. That is probably the starting point wherein you can see one of the largest repository of the structures that are accepted by or agreed upon by the web community, and lots of organizations are honoring that. And as Gaurav just pointed out, there are predefined formats by which you can define and therefore inform a program or a software that this is how this is an event, this is a recipe, this is a person, this is an organization, and so on and so forth. So this is a very 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 essential part of having information in a structured way on the web. But Gaurav, you said that even Fortune 500 companies don't implement it.
Yeah.
Why do you think that happens? Why is that the case?
So it's there are the majority reason is essentially awareness, right? But it's not the only reason, right? See, it's always an afterthought. It's always an afterthought, right? And what that also means is that it's a pain, right? So for example, New York Times, right, as I said earlier, the structured when they started implementing cooking, right, schemas, right, recipe schemas, that means that they went from few 7-8 fields to a 50 field form, right? Now what you were asking the content writer to input content in a 50 field rather than a 10 field, right?
Yeah.
Now that's a huge ask, right, if you will. That's a huge ask, right? There's a lot of conflict. There is a lot of traction. There's a lot of issues, right, that happens if you start implementing such things in a large organization. But having said that, right, there is lack of awareness, right, in the digital leadership most of the times, right? So they know about schema, they have heard about schema, but how important it is something that still very very few digital leaders understand.
Right. And who do you feel should be championing this in the sense that is this something that the developers should come into the organization and tell and talk about it? Because that's what I feel, at least personally, because it's definitely quite technical in nature. It is. I feel that it is going to be hard for someone who is owning a business or running a business for them to understand that upfront. So where would you feel should be the highest responsibility for introducing this in an organization? Do you think this developers?
Absolutely. As you said, right, the concept is extremely technical, right? Right, and so that's why the tech folks need to champion this, right? But what they have to be little aware is that it doesn't only involve the technical implementation, right? It involves a huge buy-in, as I said, right, from content teams, because now they have to input a content into a much bigger fields than in there, right? It always also involves buy-in from the business teams, because now it means that for the same content which you were taking, let's say, it's going to take much more time for building the same kind of content, because there is a much bigger structured format to input the content, right? So that's where, and what it also does is that it forces, right? It forces the people who are building content to adhere to a particular format, so that they can't skip a particular field and they say, I'm not going to put this information, right? But because then the information is incomplete, right? That's where it needs a lot of buy-in from the business, right? But showing the importance definitely lies in the hands on the technical people, because in the end, they understand the concept and how it is affecting the overall implementation. Absolutely.
All right. Just moving on, coming to voice a little bit more than structured data. Some of the examples that you just shared in the talk today, are they really voice related searches or voice searches, or they could have been just searches, typed searches as well? So what is the element of voice component in the search examples that you shared over here?
Sure.
Are they only coming up when voice searches happen?
Yeah. So NLP, so natural language search, is, so can the natural language search happen on a mobile or a web as well? Absolutely, it can. Okay. there is, unfortunately, Google doesn't open the data, and and the reason that they have got is that they don't want to bastardize the industry, that the way SEO industry got bastardized. Now, but it is at least the best we can do, right? The best way that we can get the data around natural languages search. But voice or no voice, the point is that the content is usually not optimized for natural language searches, right?
Right.
So you have to optimize, because the moment, right? And that's where these two slides are important, because even Google, the way it treats a natural language keyword versus a normal keyword is very, very different, right?
Yeah.
So when I say the content is not optimized for natural language search, I don't mean that you are not ranking on it. You might be ranking on it, but is it giving the information, right? So for example, right, for the same if you see that right here, Google this is even the first video. So it's not that he's not giving the importance, is lowering down the importance of that video, but you see that that he still trimmed and said that this is out of this long video, right? Long 18 minutes. You see that 18-minute video, right?
Yeah.
These are the 83 seconds that you should be looking at. Okay.
Right.
Now make sure, that means that you have to always be very, very aware that for all your searches where you are where you are essentially coming on or ranking on, how are you giving that information very, very quickly, right? And that's where that means that so and that's what you have to focus on, right? Don't have to really get into that argument of whether it's voice, not voice, but how do I optimize the content for natural language searches and give that information very contextually, right?
I agree with you, because I do remember about uh, uh, I would say about even 6-7 years back, when you would search something, like searching on Google used to be a skill. That if you can't find the thing that you are searching for, that means you don't know how to put in the right keywords or put in the right set of terms so that Google can understand what you're looking for and give you the right thing. You would almost, as tech people, we used to blame our peers around that you don't know how to put in the right keywords in Google to get the result that you want. But Google is getting smarter over the last 6 and 7 years. So it is now less about your ability to put in the right keywords, but more about the responsibilities taken by a software like Google to figure out what is your intent and then give you the best result as possible. And for that reason, as you pointed out, if we give structured data, that means we are helping Google more. We are helping a software like Google learn and understand our content. So what do you, and in last week, I had given a brief session on technical SEO, and I was pointing out this bit last week itself. Like, the concept of SEO now has changed into how can we make sure Google understands us better than to preempt or in any way game the system and optimize for certain keywords and all. So what are your thoughts about this? Like, the entire talk that you gave today seemed to be something very much on the lines of how to do better at SEO in the modern era than specifically voice. So any comments or any thoughts around this?
Sure. I mean, yes, you can definitely say that, right? And in the end, right? In the end, what end up happening, right? So if you build your content in a way that it is, and I always, when I used to do this talk earlier, right? I used to go into a lot of theoretical concept, and I slowly realized that people are more interested to understand more practical implications. Okay. And that's where I changed my talk, in the last year or so, is that, what are some low hanging fruits that you can do, right? For building, for optimizing your content for the voice, right? Now, so yes, is it technical SEO? Absolutely technical SEO, but it is very, very focused onto one part of the technical SEO, right? Which is just how do you optimize your content, or how do you tell your content, Google much better about what your content means, right? Context on the content, right? Which is the bedrock of the voice, optimizing your content for the voice world, right? Because if you remember, right, earlier, the context precedes content in the voice world. So the more you optimize your content for the voice world, right, the voice first world, right, the better, chance you would have to, essentially rank, and the better chance you would have to, essentially heard by your consumers on the keywords that you want to them to know information on, right? So it goes hand in hand, right? So yes, the
Right.
more information, the better you tell Google what your content means, the better, chances you have in the voice world.
So I would take a step ahead and say that you're probably optimizing not just for voice search but also future of all forms of search. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. So one of the other things that I had in mind is that do you feel that there is it's kind of related to this because you said people have been saying that voice doesn't work, something like that.
Yeah.
And in my context, at least, and I don't work with the same set of clients that you work with, but give me some information around that. A lot more organizations are focusing on ads and digital ads to get discovered than focusing on organic search or search optimizing for search in the first place. Uh, Maybe because it gives quick returns. Maybe for maybe for other things as well. But largely organic search or ranking high on search uh, doesn't seem to be as exciting thing as it was, say, 5-7 years back. Are you observing a similar thing, or are ads taking over more than optimizing for search?
Well, if that's the case, I mean, your clients are a lot in trouble. So I'll give you a very quick example. Okay,
Hmm.
if the ad, and it's a little different from what we are talking about voice, but just from an ad point of view, right? Ad.
Hmm.
So if the content, or if the strategy for the traffic acquisition strategy, okay,
Hmm.
is ad centric, and if it is not being optimized, right, on how your how it would end up bringing more organic traffic
Hmm.
in the long run, right, then there's a big problem in the strategy. Okay, in even in that ad acquisition strategy,
Hmm.
the usual way, or the right way to implement a ad driven acquisition traffic acquisition strategy is when that you actually use ads to give Google a signal that this particular page is important for the users for a particular keyword.
Right.
Okay, right, and essentially keep on optimizing it. So right, so for the users which are driving in. So if a person come in, and if you have a, let's say, 70% bounce rate from the
Hmm.
ads, right, and that's why I don't really like this the landing pages concept of ad driven
Yeah.
strategy, because it's very, very tactical. And if it's if a if a company is doing that, then they're very thinking short term, right? They're extremely short term. When I work with clients on a ad driven traffic acquisition strategy, I bring back them to the website, to a landing page. For sure they have a form, but
Mhm.
the whole idea is that how. So if I'm able to, let's say, bring 1,000 people from ads to a page, and 1,000 people, if I'm able to reduce my bounce rate to a place where it's 20-30%, right, on that particular keyword, there's a
Right.
very, very good chance that it will give the signal back to Google that this is a good page that people are liking on that particular keyword. Okay,
Okay.
so if your ad driven strategy is not working on that lines, right, to optimize your content, your layout, your structure, your CTAs, for to ensure that you have a very low bounce rate, so that you
Hmm.
can find get a lot of more organic results in the future, then there is a
Hmm.
huge problem in that strategy itself, right?
Right. I
So,
do have a. Sorry,
yeah.
go on. Complete your point.
Oh, yeah, and just to answer what you originally asked, I think and the way that even the large clients, I mean, organic acquisition. So even the video that I showed earlier, the L'Oreal video, it does talk
Yeah.
about the organic traffic acquisition, right? And
Hmm.
it is definitely a centerpiece, right, for a lot of organizations, right? Because they have to think long term. They have to think 5 years. They have to think 10 years, right? Especially the large enterprises, right? So they can't think of ad driven strategies, which is extremely small, right? A month or a couple of months, kind of a strategy, right? Yeah, and you can't, it is two different things, right? So you can have a 1-2 month strategy, but but that would not mean that you should not have a long-term strategy, right? And long-term strategy is what is going to anyway give you results, right? Yes.
Right. I do have a question around the thing that you explained. When you say that from an ad, if someone comes to your site and the bounce rate is low, the fact that Google gets a signal around it. So is this something that is documented, publicly known, or something like that? That this
There is
being a signal?
there is a lot of growth hacking articles around it, right?
Okay.
And not only Google, right? And it's a quick tip, right, for anybody out there, so which has worked. I don't know who wrote about this. Probably no, not Neil Patel. I don't know. Somebody wrote
Okay.
about this.
Okay.
Somebody wrote. I don't remember exactly. So if you're writing an article on a Medium, okay, and a lot of people have actually seen that. So see, everybody. Okay, let's look at TikTok algorithm. Okay, let's look at like any sites algorithm, right? How do you come on the featured page? Okay, so Medium or TikTok or everything, they essentially look at the particular content and they say, how much traffic is this content getting? Are the people actually engaging with that particular content, right? Every damn platform works like that, right?
Right.
And so for example, if you're writing an article on Medium, right, and you want that a Medium article to get featured on that featured page, right? The quick dirty hack is that just run a very low dirty Facebook ad, which is with a low CPM, okay, and a low CTC, right, and just fund some initial traffic to Medium. Now that's going to give a signal to Medium that, hey, this is something that people are liking, people are reading, right? And it automatically pushes it back to the featured page. It's a very well-known hack actually now, I believe so. I mean, have Medium said that? No, but are there enough?
I agree. Usually, I don't recommend these hacks. That's my stand. But that coming from Gaurav, this is something that if anyone wants to practice, please go ahead, give this a shot. But specifically with Google, it sounded, because I have a counter logic that is running through my head at this point of time. Because if someone who's paying ad revenue, if Google is getting ad revenue on something, and then learning that this is actually working, what is the incentive for Google to actually start organically raising it? Because then it would end up losing that revenue also. On the other hand, I do get this the understand this point wherein all these platforms want to show the highest hit thing first, because they all want to show that their best content out there, because then only more people will have trust on it. But the revenue will start getting reduced if they started using that as a search signal. That's what is running my head.
See, it's not going to help Google in the long term, right? And I think Google definitely understands that, right? So and this piece, people have seen benefits. We've seen benefits with the clients, right? And with targeting. See, in the end, Google wants to make sure that it is serving content to people which people find interesting, right? Which people find worthy enough to spend their time on. That's the whole goal, okay? Which we are working on. Now, if Google don't, so let's say just take argument for the moment, right? Google it doesn't push that back on the organic acquisition, right? I mean, and the person, and there's a good content that's being created, right? At one point of time, the organization will run out of money, right, to run ads, okay? And and I think that's very counterintuitive for Google in the long term. I mean, Google has to help business, right? I mean, it's kind of universal, right? We have to make sure that we have to do the right things for our clients, and the right thing would happen to us. It's a very cliche term, I know, but it works all the time, right? To answer all this, right? Do the right things for the clients, and the right thing happen to you. And I think that's what the motto is for business. And so it will not help Google in the long term, right? Even if it's going to help in the shorter term from ad revenue, not in the long term for sure. I mean, it is going to fuel, if it helps the business, it's going to help them in the longer term, right?
All right, makes sense, absolutely. Speaking of this voice-based search again, one more question I had was, how if someone has to validate that voice-based searches are increasing, and obviously there are facts thrown like about 50% of searches have become voice-based and all. And I assume these numbers that come, just this is just a side question to you, Gaurav. Do these number combine all the bots and Alexas and Apple Series and all of that combined, or is it just voice search on Google, which has increased really to a very large proportion of global searches?
So the 50%, the number actually came in from one of our senior executive of Alibaba many years back, in
Okay.
in a conference, and that's been going around. And for a long time, people, so yes, everybody take that, but very few people realize that actually where that number came from.
Where has it come from? Yeah.
Yeah, but it actually came from Alibaba many years back, that by 2020, 50% of the searches would be voice-based searches. It's a very old,
Yeah.
The last time that Google shared the data, okay, was 2017,
Okay.
when Google shared the voice-based data. And and there is actually, I think, Indian Rajan Andaran or someone who had some of the article in some. You can quickly Google it, but I think 2017 was the last time it opened the data, right? And what it said that on mobile, again, I don't have that handy, but in mobile, right, the voice searches are the second number of searches, right?
Okay.
And there was a number to it. You can quickly find it if you Google it. But after that, Google has not opened up the data.
Okay.
Neither Alexa nor any of them. And in the last conference, there was one of the conference, and I was actually talking to a panel which included all big shots of this industry. And I did raise that question, that why you guys are not opening up the data.
Right.
So the answer that came out from that panel was that because we don't want to bastardize the industry, the way the SEO industry got bastardized. So I think Google just don't want to open the data.
Okay.
And that's where, this is probably the best known way right now to know. Just go to hrf.com, and if you put in any website name, you will find the keywords for which the traffic is coming on the site. And there is a section which talks about the NLP queries that is coming on the website, right? So you can just look at the NLP queries and you will find a lot of natural language.
This is href.com.
ahref.com.
ahref.com, right?
Yeah, that's a very popular tool in SEO.
Popular tool. Right. The question that I actually intended to ask, that if someone is a website owner and they want to know how many of the searches to my own site is coming from voice, is there any way for them to do it? How can they find that out?
So Ahref is one good tool for knowing that, right? And then you can look at the Google's the site console, right? With the webmaster console, right? And you can find a lot of keywords there, right? If you dig in the data, you can find there. There's been rumors, not confirmation, but there have been rumors that soon there would be a tab in there which would say voice in the Google Search Console, right? So at least the owners know that what is the kind of a searches are coming in. It has not confirmed yet, but for now it's just so you have to look into the keywords in which from the traffic is coming in, and you have to essentially dig in and to find which are the natural language keywords. Ahref does a good job. It gives you a complete different tab which just ranks all this keywords. So if you are high traffic website, you have to probably dig in very deep into or find these searches. Ahref does a good job to essentially just highlight them very quickly.
Right, but in any case, non-English vernacular searches in India and all, a lot of it is happening on voice, because it's just easier to just speak it out to Google rather than to type a non-English thing. So is that a trend or something that you have also observed or you are aware of?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's something that is. Google. So I have some videos in the which is actually skipped. I skipped because of the time. But anybody who's looking at some of the videos right here, right? So I talk about a little accessibility, right, and different videos out there. And these videos essentially talk about a lot about the accessibility, and it has actually a video around similar use case that in India, right, where people are using so they're pointing the video camera to a particular text and it's reading them out aloud, right? So
Right.
accessibility is a very, very big focus. It's a very, very big focus. And recently, even um, the accessibility standards that they got updated last year, I believe, or this year. I don't exactly remember which year this got, but in US, they the federal government essentially added that your content should be understandable in audio format as well.
Right.
Okay, that it should be so people who can't read, who are blind, can also understand it very well, right? So the whole push around accessibility is a big push, and there is a lot of research. If you look at deep research videos around voice, in the way that the teams which are essentially working in this Google for NLP, building these NLP engines, they're actually working with people with disabilities, speech disabilities, right? So they are actually trying to perfect the voice recognition, right, for people who stutter or who are not very clear in their speech.
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic piece, right?
Yeah.
And I think accessibility is a huge push. I have not really delved deep into the data of myself on saying that what kind of a searches, what is the number of searches and things like that. But again, I've heard a lot of people saying that yes, Hindi and other languages are big
Regional
time on
languages,
voice.
yeah.
Regional
Big time
languages
on
are big
voice.
time on voice. Yeah.
Right. Okay. We'll be running out of time in a bit. I'll take a few more minutes of you, Gaurav. One is, as a closing thought, I just want to know that uh, there are three different primary roles that I had talked about at the beginning, which is content teams, design, and the technical or the development teams. Can you tell that for the future of search, including voice or outside it as well, what should be the role or what are the things that the content team or the design team or the development team should take the primary responsibility of in order to make sure that their websites are friendly for searches through voice or any future form that we might expect? So can you talk a little bit about what responsibilities the content team should be taking, the design team should be taking, the development team should be taking?
Sure, absolutely. I can take one by one. So I think the content team or the people who are responsible for content strategy, and it's going little hand in hand with the design teams as well, because a lot of time design teams build these content strategies, right, on different how the content should be structured and things like that. But if I just take these two in one go, what you have to ensure that you are thinking about how you're gonna serve the same content over a voice-based interface. Okay, how will somebody understand the context of the content, right? Which I've been talking all my talk, in the voice world, right? And that's something that you have to focus on, right? Right, all the time. That means that if you for example, if you stuff on 5 different topics on one page, right? If you're building a design, and in that design you're trying to explain 5 different topics in one page, don't do that. Probably create 5 different pages, right? So that all pages are different, and it can very contextually define or give information on what you want to communicate to the people. Okay, so just be a little more aware that how would you serve this content from an to the voice world, right? From an accessibility point of view, right? It should not be an afterthought, right? Here in we've been in some of my friend circles, we've been talking about accessibility first designs. Okay, right? Think of that. And from a development point of view, ensure that you force the structure, right? How much don't go over towards the unstructured formats of content, which has been the kind of way that most of the content, or for example blogs, right? You have a text field, write whatever you want to write into it, right? Right. Don't so when you're building these fields, or these schemas platforms, ensure that it is in a structured format, right? If there is a there is no content piece that should go into an unstructured format, right?
Yeah.
So if you do these two things, I think should be good for the voice world.
Right. I think the design team is particularly a team that might have difficulty around this, because the kind of work they do is so visual in nature, and
Yeah,
we are really saying that turn yourself blind and try to experience it in a way. But then yeah, good tips for the three of them, the three
yeah,
groups.
yeah.
Where can we learn more about this, Gaurav? If we want to understand more around voice search or the future of searches and all, what should be our sources of learning?
Yeah, so voicebot.ai, it's the run by a gentleman called Brent Cancella, right? That's right now the best platform for a lot of things. Even so, he does a lot of data researches and surveys and things like that. So a lot of question around where the consumption is going, what is the kind of consumption is, which people, what kind of people, what industries are consuming. He's trying to answer that. He's literally championing this in a big time. I mean,
Right.
and it's a very popular blog, right? It's more than few million hits every month. So
Okay.
voicebot.ai
Okay.
is probably the best place.
All right. So voicebot AI. All right. We have run out of time. I'll just close this thing. Firstly, I'd thank you, Gaurav, for spending a little over an hour with us, early morning your time. There's a lot to learn. It's a little technical in nature, the conversation that happened today, but I can just summarize a few points that had come out from the talk that Gaurav gave. One is that use schema. Schema is all about structured data, which is to make sure that Google and other softwares are able to understand the context and the content that you're giving in. Use conversational language, use a lot of questions, answer questions. This is something that Gaurav pointed out a few times over. And also, eventually, this is at this point of time, this topic, from what I understand, is still evolving. But from a larger point of view, as Gaurav pointed out, a large number of things that we are talking about in this context is really talking about technical SEO, and it's really talking about how we make our information more understandable by search engines and other tools that are out there, so that they can make sure that the relevant answers come in, whether search through voice being one of the focus area that Gaurav said, or any other way as well. Like, even if people do start doing text searches, this was going to benefit in the long run anyways. So thanks once again, Gaurav, for this, for your early morning talk. Before I close, I just want to make a few points for our audience. One is that we are doing these sessions every Saturday. From next Saturday onwards, we'll go back to 11 a.m. time, which is the time when we do most of our talks in India, especially when the speakers and the participants are from India. We this Today we talked about voice search. Next week we are going to do a more detailed discussion around AMP. Carrying forward from the conversation we had 2 weeks back, where someone from the AMP team, Naina from AMP team, had come in and told us about AMP. But in the coming week, we are going to have a couple of developers around to talk about some practical considerations, and as well as challenges that people have faced in implementing AMP, and is really AMP a great way forward in also trying to address that question in a way. We are also having conversations around PHP WordPress security. How do we use web page test more effectively? Some conversations around e-commerce, trying to line them up at this point of time. And also a design-oriented talk is something that we are lining up in the next few weeks. If you would like to hear any topic, or if you would like to speak or participate in any of the conversations, please go to hasgeek.com/content there's a place where you can drop in your proposal, and you can express your intent to participate or ask for a topic that is useful for all of us. So that's all from our side. Gaurav, any closing thoughts?
No, absolutely. This has been great. Thank you for having me here. You have my contact details, guys. Feel free to ping me. Have conversations on debates. Whatever. Right. Reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and happy to ignite a conversation.
Right. It was really fun to have a conversation with you too, Gaurav. I hope you also enjoyed as much. Thanks a lot. Have a good day, Gaurav, and a good evening to everyone else in India. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye-bye.